Hi, we are Ben Curtain Studio, and today we have an artist talk, and she's Michelle, and she's doing the residency here, and she's our open call artist here this year. So now today we are looking forward to know more about Michelle's work here, and in the few months she is in the residency in Guangdu Art Museum, and also focusing on the same topic about the garbage, or about the language, the communication, well, in the cities. So, well, she's now in Taipei and now in Ben Curtain Studio. She's more deeper in this topic. So, and also Ben Curtain Studio this year we are focusing on the how to say that? Yeah, sustainable, and also the eco-friendly, those topics also this year and the few years. So anyway, we are looking forward to know more, and then so that's the start. Okay, so thank you.
Hello. I'm going to end up reading. Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to end up reading because I wrote something. So, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to interrupt, but we'll also ask questions at the end. I'm Michelle Rosenberg. I'm a visual and sound artist with a background in architecture. I've been here for 3 months, as Sherry has just said, and I'm currently an artist in residence at the Bamboo Curtain Studio. And this past October, November, I was a resident at the Kwandu Museum. I'm going to show two sort of big projects from the past 5 years, and I'm going to be really fast through the first one. But it gives a little bit of context on what I'm working on. Ooh, let me see where I am. Here, maybe this way. So for a long time I did mostly participatory sound work, and I was this is a body of work that comes after I did a bunch of installations for human to bird communication. And I became interested in how the whistle sounds I was using were like simple units of communication, like tiny little expressive sounds. And I became interested more in having people talk to each other rather than speaking to the birds. These are just some sort of sample images of inspiration, things I was looking at. These are speaking machines. And these are some images by Kierkegaard, who designed these tubes for listening through from one room to another. I started by carving out whistles in wood, so I made my own whistles with chisels inside of wood. And in this particular piece, you can blow into a hole on one side of the board, and then it'll sound a whistle sound on the other, and vice versa. And this is sort of a sample piece. After this, I took the idea of the voices being removed from the body, and I started sort of spreading it out inside of rooms and inside of buildings. Let's see. This is an installation in my studio where I embedded tubes in the walls and allowed the blown air to travel to other locations. So there's a series of networks throughout this room where you blow into a hole and the whistling sound happens in another location, in an unexpected location. This is sort of the interface, the holes that you blow into and what the whistle looks like. Let's see. Sample. And so when you blow into a hole, you don't know where the sound is going to end up. It could end up next to someone else who's blowing into another hole somewhere else. It could end up in another room. And in this installation, the walls were also open in the back, so you could see the whistles, and you could also operate the whistles from behind, because some of them were slide whistles. And I took this idea, and it was open to the public, so the public could participate and use straws to blow into the holes. I also did a performance in the space where I choreographed different movements within the space, sort of like a strange dance. And this is a little drawing showing all the different networks that are inside the room. And then this is what was interesting also, this project sort of could take on different contexts and different venues. This is just an art gallery. But then this is like a alternative performance space in a warehouse in Brooklyn. This is a very random space. And I made the networks go through the whole floor of this warehouse. And then I also had a commission to do this in a private residence. So this is an example of this where in the kitchen, but also in all of the private bedrooms in this house, there's a place where you can blow into a hole. And then in the center of the house, like the most sort of like a central public location, all of the whistles sounded in one place. So you could sort of have a concert where you were alone in your room playing, but then all of the sounds would be sort of collected in this one space. So let's see. So that's so that's sort of context for what I started working on this project called the Free Alphabet, which I'm currently still working on. In 2012, I spent part of the year in London, and I was still thinking about basic units of communication. Sound as an invisible medium, and I'm also sort of attracted to other things that are invisible. And so litter is sort of fits into this idea of invisibility. When I was wandering through the streets, I noticed the litter, and I noticed that it was very similar to New York, but just a little bit different, almost like I'm in a parallel world. The matches were wooden instead of paper. The drinking cans were different brands. There were many, many, many rubber bands all over the streets, and I learned that that this is sort of something kids collect and make big rubber band balls. And then, I started to learn about different habits, like in England, in London, people like to leave their newspapers on their seats after they leave because they imagine that other people will also read them afterwards, which is sort of a little bit not so clean, but sort of generous. But what I was noticing is that the litter was telling a story of life in London, and not too dissimilar to the way archaeological remains of a lost civilization, which I worked on an archaeological dig, and basically digs are digging up other civilizations' trash, so it's not dissimilar. So in a similar way, that's how we learn about civilizations. And then there's the subplot of labor issues around trash. In this case, the street sweepers who leave their brooms hidden in the bushes of parks. It's a thankless job, often staffed by recent immigrants and sometimes also prisoners. There's a history of using prisoners to clean the streets. And then also there's sort of this element of public space. And in this photo, I think this is actually in Hong Kong, but in this photo I was interested in how these garbage cans that are like basically public property and public furniture get reused for this barricade. And when I was working on this project back in New York, Occupy Wall Street was happening. And through the protests, there was a lot of innovations about how people were communicating to each other and how public space was getting used. And I use this photo because you can see the garbage, the litter is quite dominant in the photo. And I made the connection that litter, invisible and ubiquitous, could be a method of communicating and reclaiming public space, and if not actually, but at least symbolically, which I was interested in. And then the use of codes in public space is not completely unknown. These are some examples of different types of codes that people have used in the past. One from the Boy Scouts, another from hobos, which I won't explain what hobos are, but hobos are from back in during the 30s in the United States. Hobos were these people that rode the trains, and apparently they had this written code language that they would leave behind to show to sort of communicate to the other people riding the trains. And then this other image is sort of is maybe a more historical image of trail signs, just how you would move rocks and move twigs to communicate where a trail is. And then in the States, and presumably in other countries that use a phonetic alphabet, when you're a child, you learn the sound of a letter by associating it with known words. So for example, here, apple starts with the letter, apple starts with the sound made by the letter A. And in fact, this is such a sort of common idea that A is for apple. It's like a very well-known saying in the States. Like it's sort of automatic. And we know this. So as I collected litter on my daily walks around London, I started organizing them by name as well, and based on the first sound of the object's name. And then I also asked British people that I met to assist me in giving them names, local names, and to make the code like even more particularly site specific. I created an object alphabet of these things. Here's an example. Most of them litter, but some of them were environmental, like leaves and feathers and twigs, which were much more common in London than in New York, I'll say later. And some of them are also things that are freely available in stores. So it was the idea of what was free started to expand a little bit. And then I printed this poster, which had a description on one side and sort of explained the project, and also invited people to take this code and use it to write messages on the street. And I was writing messages on the street myself. And I guess it felt a little bit subversive, like I was breaking the law, even though I was just reorganizing things I found already on the street. But it did sort of feel like it still felt like I had sort of discovered this. I was using this underused resource to communicate. So it felt sort of like a potent exercise. Those are examples. And then before I left London, I did a little installation at the Royal College of Art. And I used my code to write out the first paragraph from a manual for the cleaners union, and it explained the rights that cleaners have. This is a close-up. And then people had the key. I had the key there, and people would stop and decode the message. And I actually had to ask the cleaning staff not to sweep up the installation. And then it's sort of silly thing at the very end of the show. I had a little snack. I had a little closing reception, and I spelled out goodbye in code with the food. Not a lot of people figured it out. So I came back to New York, and I did it here. I did it there, sorry. And I was curious about how the garbage compared from one city to the other. I generally found New York litter to be much more disgusting than in London, which is strange. And I think because it's my city and because I live there, it was much harder to separate it out and think of it as as an object of material culture. It was so it was a little bit more difficult to work with in New York. And I think there's something psychologically interesting about that your own trash is much more gross than the trash of an interesting foreign country. And then of course New York has much more trash than anywhere else I've ever been. So, and like in London, I collected and alphabetized the litter, and I noted how the litter was similar and different than London. Stories emerged, as they did in London, and comparisons. And lots of sort of little interesting things like discovering that the most common can thrown away and on the side of the road is Red Bull. Is this, and that in New York, leaves and twigs don't really exist so much. And that in New York, there was so much litter that I was able to almost complete the alphabet. Every letter of the alphabet had a object associated with it, which was actually much harder to do in London because it was slightly cleaner somehow. And I did a code again in New York, but this time it was on a postcard, and I distributed it the way that people distribute ads in New York, which is standing on the street and passing things out. And then it did this installation in New York, and then let's see, on 2 beds of sort of concrete to mimic a sidewalk. And in this case, what is written out is actually the description of the project, as opposed to something sort of a little bit different. Let's see. Here's another example. And then the approach to collection, this approach of collecting and sorting and distributing. Also, I kept sort of working with this in different contexts, and it can become very, very small and site-specific. This is a version of the alphabet for a garden. The alphabet is dedicated to a poet who enjoyed walking through this park. And this is a version for a small tourist shopping area. And this is focusing on things that are free from the various shops and cafes. And then also the project sort of inspired various artist books and other studio experiments. So it has a little bit of a life. This is a crossword puzzle where all of the clues are the same. The clues are all, how do you feel? And that takes us to here. So coming to Taiwan, I didn't think I'd actually be able to work on this project at all here, because the language is so different. But I did learn about the Zhuyin Fuhao system, the bopomofo. And I'm going to actually attempt to show a little tiny video just for fun while I talk. Let's see if I can do this. The notation system, which to me looks like Hebrew, was like a little. Here, I'm gonna stick this over here. I'm just gonna show a couple minutes of this. Where is it?
Hi. How?
So this, I'm just going to show like a minute of this. This is attempting to use the bopomofo alphabet to say, hi, how are you? I am fine, thanks.
You. I.
The volume seems really low. So it's going to go on in the background.
哀呢？
But because I'm unfamiliar with the system of notation and the language, it's totally strange to me. I've been actually asking people here to help me sort the litter that I've collected. So this is an image from a recent workshop at the Kwandu Museum, where I asked an audience to sort of help give me the proper names of everything.
汤匙、
So this culminated in a small exhibit at Kwandu Museum of Fine Arts with this. The main thing that I showed was this participatory installation where I asked people to place their unwanted items inside these plastic bags. And each bag corresponds to one of the letters of the bopomofo alphabet. And these are the, and it's sort of arranged as your keyboard. Some installation shots.
Kafa.
And then I also went around writing messages, but only wrote ni hao actually. So this is ni hao, and written with litter in different locations.
赖氏。
And while I've been at Bamboo Curtain Studio, I've been doing more research about the litter and the garbage practices here. And I've been thinking about how to organize all of these stories and images and sounds and smells that I've collected.
嗨。
I've learned a little bit about the collection of food for pigs and visited a farm where they were cooking leftover restaurant scraps. This is actually an image from World War II in England. I guess a collection of
Okay, so we are I will going to share some artworks from the residency artists here in Bangkok Studio, and also some of the interesting things. And so it's like to look back the waste material if we want to how to say it? We'll just start it and only for 5 minutes. So and then we can have questions to Michelle. Yeah, it's okay. I just press 1. Oh, okay. So because of how to say that? Because this speak is like the first speak for this year, and so or maybe I can use Chinese. I don't know. Okay. OK， 就是因为这我们今年就是第一个讲座，这样，this is the first speech in for Bangkok Studio. So I think it's really interesting because in the last year, 2015, and also the few years, we often face our partners, for example, volunteers or interns or artists, they will use the waste material to do the reuse artwork. So here are just some examples. So how we can how to say 就我们可以看到什么这样，然后就想说跟大家分享一下。哎呀 So the story is like from the free alphabet, and then so 我到底要讲中文还是英文？开胸。Okay. So for example, because of Michelle, and we also read back to see how is the policy of the Taipei City government about the garbage bag. So it's like from the 1980s, and also because we also see the pig farm to see how they feed the leftover to the pigs. Yeah. So the idea of where are the garbage from the Taipei City go. Every small details is also we also learn about this in the same time. So, and this is just an example. Can you distinguish what's the differences between these two pictures? 就这两张照片有哪里不同吗？就有没有看到哪里不一样？你有看到哪里不一样？Yeah. Oh, is there any difference? Oh, the lights. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The 我先用中文讲好，就是其实这两张照片啊，它一个不一样，一个是艺术家在场，一个是艺术家不在。The differences between these two pictures is one is the artist is here and one is the artist is not here. It means that this is the artist from Sweden, Tor, and she doing the performance arts and tell how we can receive the micro 就微生物 in our daily life. So he used the interesting way. But so when we see the left of this, we can see that he's doing the performance. But in the right is in our after he back to his own countries, and we try to represent his artwork. So it's like so after all, the right is this one, is the model. Can you see in the middle there's a lady there, and this is Thor's girlfriend. Yeah. So it's like our partners, we represent this as the material he left. So this is, I guess, it's just one example that's how we can use this in the art village. Yeah, and also, so I think in our daily life, what we are facing is we're always thinking about whether we have to throw this to the garbage car in 5:30 p.m. or not. Yeah. So this kind of really small issue is everyday life, and also about the storage, about 就仓储, how we can manage this in our daily life. So after all, they are the material without pay, so that people can use this and without pressure. And for another example, this is a wrap, yeah. And although it looks very old and very old, but actually this had been a work in the Taipei Biennial, and this is by the Adam. So about the more details, we can see the website, but and And I feel it's interesting because when we see this material, also this is also had been the door， 也是it had been 就也在大门上用过，这样就是the same thing but as many ways to do it. So and the other example is about so it's like the reuse of the items is sometimes can show why is the sustainable maybe. 然后以这个来说，就是像这个就是以前也是有，就是佩如在这边驻村的时候，然后有做过，但现在会是就是同样这个这个气料，然后我们用到另外一个地方去，所以 so it's now in the other corner. Maybe it's not that vivid, but still exists. Yeah. And the other example is one of the Japanese artists, and he tell the child if there's any toys you dislike, you can just bring. So they bring some toys without some items, or they just dislike it. So he's tried to use this and as a new toy for them. Yeah. So this is and this is like a robot still here in our just around us. Yeah. And sometimes we often, so for example, our interns and volunteers, they also use the bamboo or the things to as, for example, the chairs. Yeah. And yeah, so about the artwork, and this is from the finger players, and they are a really professional performance artist, and they came from Singapore. So it's like they use this because this is the character from the Palm Tree Creek. So this is about the memory and about the how we can see our homeland. So this guide is called Akeng, the name, and how to make it is by the garbage. So for example, the neck is the 拖把，好生拖, so it's really flexible. Yeah. And so this is so when students stay in the workshop, they also try to know how to use this well, yeah, because their function might be different, or they can always to adjust this by how they would like to use. Yeah, and this is another example. This is also performance arts, but and in this example is the danceology 舞蹈生态系. So I feel it's really interesting because they tell us that this dance is the dance of the water, 水之舞. I don't know whether English translation is good. And then so this group, they try to let the performance out of the theater. So sometimes, for example, this dance, they will put the garbage on the dancer's body, but once the audience is from Tzu Ji, they always do the recycling. So the elderly people, they feel like they just run to the stage and then grab the garbage down. 就是他们就冲上舞台，然后把垃圾扯下来，这样。Yeah. So it's really interesting because the audience feedback is quite different comparing to the normal one. Yeah. So. And this is the artwork from Bohan, Zhang Bohan. And so the image we see now is made by the garbage, the camera made by the garbage. So he used this is try to tell when sometimes we choose what we want to see in the image. But however, for example, this site is the Fulong 海水浴场, is the resource place in the sea. Around the sea. So in that place in 80s is quite full of many bad things. For example, just different bad things about killings or something. So she tried to use this to tell the story. Yeah. And so for these three parts, for these three works are also in the past year, we also invite them to here. Yeah, and sometimes people or volunteers, they will say the material is still okay, so they will just try to use this. Yeah. So for example, this is our intern Cai Xun. So she used this, turn the left from to the B. Yeah. So. And also in her practice in college, she also tried to think about how to reuse this. Yeah, and this is the teamwork. Yeah, and also this is some pictures of the green living room in Benbenko studio, because, for example, out of you can see the bookshelf is cut from the school chairs. Yeah, so, and we will have speech in this year, so welcome to here. Yeah, just the material, yes. And this is also when the opening of the living room, and we also invite Faye and Fang Yi to do the 打火机 for us. Yeah, so it's like from this we can see how we can let people know, or to teach students and to invite them to engage in. Yeah, and okay, so the last two is another artwork. It's not the last year. It's like in last year in 2014. Yeah, and one is the 静物研究是然后这是以轩的作品。那so in his work, he's trying to how to say that 就重新装置这些，然后想说可以看一些就是照片这样，就是试图so he tried to reframe these things, and because for example in our class maybe we have some kind of things to let us drawing, but how about we rethink about the things that is no more use. So these are just Yeah, okay. So the last one is about Stephanie, and so he's tried to focusing on there's a group of people in Lanyu, and they do the recycling, and so the way she focusing is about the engagement, or about how to solve the problems. So and that's also the stove is made by the things that we just see in daily life. Thank you.
谢谢大家今天来。事实上比较要紧是为什么会有这个艺术家在这里。I'm saying that there must be a reason why we have Michelle, right? 是智慧工作室是 focus 在艺术家跟社会有什么样的互动可能改变的关系。我们有回顾为什么我们有 Michelle 来，就是我们有open call， 希望选上的艺术家是跟我们互动，推动的我们就是环境永续的关系。所以我们评审委员去年70多件里面要选上他，所以你可以从这个角度来看，我们选上他的原因就是希望他来台湾，用他的视觉艺术的概念可以推动了什么样的计划。那你看得出来他的专业性是很够，他的视觉艺术是很够，而且他在这里也用到一个对他也有很不一样的关系，因为他在 London 跟纽约都是用 alphabet， 可是来到台湾我们是用 bopomofo， 所以这个才是比较对他也学习到，他的女儿来这里也去了学到我们的中文。所以这方面的话，我们觉得这个国际交流里面有很多的层面，双方都有学习。可是我会觉得比较有意思，就是你看得出来，刚才大宁你给的很多的案例，是我们最近这几年智慧工作室很关心的。就是艺术家实际上他跟社会是可以用我们的艺术的能量去给观众去理解，用一个艺术的角度去呈现一个事情。所以我们希望你们对 Michelle 现在他做的这个计划，他的介入的方法还有感受的什么，尽量讲，也尽量给他知道。What I'm trying to say is that why we have you and what we have been doing, and the summarize of all the artworks that she just showed. In fact, the big rope, in fact, it's my material and my work, and it has shown 5 times already. And Adam Abinkainen has shown it the 6th time. So it is something I pick up from the sea on the beach after a typhoon day. It is obviously a part of a big ship or boat when it enters into the shore, and then in a harbor, right? And it probably broke off from the harbor. And there's this big, huge rope that it is so heavy, but it has been part of an art exhibition many times. So is this useless material? It became very useful material when it's in the artist's hand. Or anything in the artist's hand, 艺术家的是魔术，他什么东西都可以变。So in Michelle's hand, boy, everything can be art. 真的，他拿出来的几个图片都很漂亮，而且可是有变为文字，多厉害！所以我们可以跟他多学习，到底他的语言符号，他要表达的意义可能这一方面 to explain more about the concept, maybe it would be more interesting how you go from materials, how you as an architect, I'm interested in you as an architect, going into the sensibility, how you pass from architect to space, to material, to such minute detail material, the thinking and the logic, and how you come to where you are.
Well, I think that my experience of being an architect is why I work with why I make interactive work. The idea, like, it's hard for me to imagine making something that doesn't have some kind of, not necessarily function, but way that it interacts with people, or way that people can participate with it. And that's I think my takeaway from architecture is this: seeing things as how, being inhabited, as opposed to being sort of outside of everyone's life, but actually everything is part of your life, or how to incorporate. And as much as I try and make work that's not participatory, I always make participatory work. I've tried not to, because it's a very hard medium to work as an artist in, because galleries don't want you to do participatory work. Nobody really. There's strength. I work within these. I try and find contexts and venues for my work, but it's not so easy when you do participatory work. So that's sort of my history of working in that way. But the garbage, the making of language with text for me or with objects for me is sort of a way to add yet another layer to something that is already, I think, incredibly layered. Like, each object already has a story. Each object already has symbolic value, whether we all sort of know what the symbolic value is or not. So there's already so many layers of meaning to these objects that we find on the street, and in a way, it's sort of preposterous to also add this element of that it represents a letter. So it's sort of more the idea of the accumulation of meaning, this like never-ending accumulation of meaning, and it's not it's not really that functional. Like, things blow away. You're never going to find all the letters you need to actually write something meaningful, but as a gesture I keep imagining that if I were to notice, several items of litter organized symmetrically or, organized sort of neatly on the side of the road, how like, what a strange sort of, like, not mystical, but, like something strange happened here. And that's also what I sort of like about the project, that it could possibly give you a sense that, there's something else is happening that you're unaware of, but you could become aware of. It's not too hard to figure out, depending on, if you're into games and whatever. But so there's part of it is also sort of trying to add a little bit of this magic back to our day-to-day environment. But yeah, the architecture thing connection is actually really a sort of functional, like seeing things as, the inhabitation of things, much more than like design or like geometry. Like I like geometry, I like design, and I still practice architecture. But I don't. That's not. I don't think that's the biggest lesson I've learned from architecture. I think that it's the fact the fact that you think about how someone uses something, or how someone inhabits something that you design, that you think about it, for the user, for the audience, is the way I think it's. Any questions? Clarifications? I probably slurred through things. I might have mumbled. You guys burned one of these brooms? Oh, yeah.
I know it's a quite different system compared to the English alphabet and the Chinese alphabet. So, but since you are here, you already did twice this kind of workshop or experiment. I just wondering to know, what have you found about if you are using the Chinese alphabet? What kind of the object inside that you found out? I mean.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm really curious about, because it's totally different system. But in the presentation, actually I hear you are telling that there's a rule. You have to use the first sound, the apple for A, like the start the first sound. But compared to the Chinese alphabet, because I didn't see any kind of rule. So when I look into the backs, actually I have to think about why you have to put into that back instead of different alphabet. So I'm also very curious about your finding, or like, well, yes.
Do you mean in terms of what the actual things are, or
how? Yeah, the outcome of the I mean the whole work.
Yeah. Well, I tried to follow the same rules, that it's the sound. I think there's like a couple things, like the things. When working in this project, you discover that lots of different people have different names for things. So it's not, there's not one name for anything. And I can't, which is in the workshop environment, that's a really interesting phenomenon to talk about what your assumption of this object is. And it's not because it's litter that I've been using, like people didn't really want to talk about it. People really thought it was gross. It was disgusting. But it's the. I mean, for me, I learn about your objects that you have here, like the flower bag, the plastic bag being called the flower bag, for instance, or that in Taiwanese some things have different names than in Mandarin, and so some people put things in the bag and wrote a little description on the object and put it in the bag. Explain it. Where is is it? Yeah. The little milk. Nyonai. That's all I know. And that leaf, I don't know what leaf is. Oh, you would call it something else? I don't know what leaf is or flower, but I know that the claw is ow. And the claw was found actually on the banks of the river right next to the studio. It was really hard to find. Howard had to go to Dansui to... The little oh yeah, it's from nearby the park. You know how there's that little tiny thing is from the park. The claw is from a restaurant. That one, the big one's from a restaurant. And cigarette. But, yeah. So what you would call the creamer something else? Naijing? But it's still n, right? And what's cigarette? Yen? So I mean, I take it that it's as common to learn the first letter. The game that with the garbage truck, that's actually the garbage truck in the video comes from a deck of little cards for learning bopomofo, and I guess the garbage truck stands for one of the letters too. You don't know what it is. But so I'm sort of gathering. I'm making the assumption that it's a similar relationship, that people also have that knowledge here. And it's not like it's definitely not. Once you're an adult, you don't remember that you learned an alphabet that way. But I'm sort of hoping that it's still part of the memory somewhere. But yeah, you learn so many alphabets here and so many characters. It's probably long ago. Very varied. Very deep. But I made the bags to make it participatory, because there's no way that like in England and in New York, I could do it myself. I didn't need help, really. I needed some sort of, but I definitely couldn't do it myself here. So it had to be participatory, and I don't feel like I can make the code, like I can assign things here, because I don't. That seemed beyond my ability to strictly assign something. But it also doesn't necessarily seem like it's as important to have a specific thing stand for a specific something else. That more, since the project is really an idea about communicating, that it doesn't have to be so strict. I think that having a actual alphabet it's easier to talk about it that way, and it's easier to make comparisons. But garbage-wise, there's a lot of similarity again here, which is, product of globalization for sure. We all have plastic bags, and rubber bands, and food waste, and leaves and twigs. So there's not a huge difference, but maybe that's also it's easier to make sort of a case-by-case comparison when it's not such a huge difference. So I'm hoping if I do this in other cities to start to really get like a very sort of interesting, strange idea of how places are different in this like very specific way. But the very first thing that I noticed while coming here is how few garbage cans there are. And I thought that meant that Taipei was very, very clean, because I thought there was some psychology behind not having public garbage cans and keeping the city clean. But I think maybe it's because they want to avoid people throwing things out and not paying for the garbage bags. I think it's more political than just being clean, but I thought maybe it was, I thought it attributed to how clean the city was. And because there are street sweepers here too, right? There's like people who clean the street. I don't see them very often, but and of course food waste seems to be the number one, like containers for food seems to be the number one garbage here, more than well, and then people keep their receipts, so it's hard, you don't see receipts so often. There's some differences.
I remember one of the garbage is the 昂包红包. So the one of the audience, he draw or she draw this garbage inside, but she also write the 昂包 in 注音符号 in bopomofo to tell Michelle that because the bag is on. 简单来说，就是他把那个昂包丢到一个那个昂那个注音符号里面，就是因为它其实有那个就不同的系统 ，bopomofo， 对 ，so it's really interesting because they didn't talk about Mandarin or Taiwanese, yeah.
So I read on your description on the postcard, talking about the creation of the writing system is going to be hopefully to be able to present as a counterpoint to commercialized form of a speech. Yeah. Could you be more elaborate in this idea to know more about how you are you actually going to create a system out of those free objects or undervalued objects? And then to propose new ways of communication, or what's your take? What's your take on this? So I'm just
it's maybe a little bit tongue in cheek that it's a free, because it's a free alphabet. It's because it's very very specifically free objects. But the idea is that the idea came from sort of becoming aware that that our speech is really regulated. Like we're not, even if it's like, we were in China recently and you can't use Gmail and all these things. And so there are places where speech really, really is regulated. But when it's a commercial form like Gmail or whatever and now that we're really used to that we communicate now through, through corporations, basically. So I basically say that to sort of bring an awareness to this idea that there isn't really anything like free speech is it's like another idea of what free means, which is that it's not. I don't even necessarily believe in free speech because of the amount of hate speech on the internet is so incredible. But it's more of like this it's thinking about garbage as something that's free or sort of focusing on the freeness of it and sort of trying to remember that very little is free nowadays, even the way that we talk to each other, mostly on the telephone, on the computer, and I also the parallels for me are really nice with litter and speech, because it's also very ephemeral. Like garbage is ephemeral and speech is ephemeral, and it is a written form, but it's not a permanent written form. And I don't know if it really has a function that, you know, like if we would really be able to communicate with each other with this as a realistic form, maybe, you know, more in sort of a game or in a, you know, as like a exercise or something. But it's sort of like a yet another like a proposal, like, you know, this might exist. This might be, maybe there'll be a time when this is useful. Maybe.
Possibly the next stage. Have you ever considered maybe instead of A for apple and talking about recycling to children, maybe from now on there's a system that you give to schools where they change A not for apple, but A for something else, which is something that they watch out, not, which is garbage or which should be recycled.
Yeah.
So this is a system.
More educational.
Yeah. Context. And then our system of bopomofo from you, basically our artists in residencies, when they have a prototype or a project, what we usually do is we follow up with it and then modify it and use it again. So we probably, in our group in Bamboo Curtain Studio, we study and analyze, is there a system where we can approach school with your kind of concept on recycling and then on thinking, so that in fact probably we have a bunch of things that is recyclable, but tell them to put in the right slot.
Right.
And that way would be because of their thinking and analysis, and then at the end we ask them what these objects are. They probably will realize that these are things that they shouldn't throw away or they shouldn't buy. To learn from direct process. This is what Bamboo Curtain Studio is trying very hard, is awareness and education about materials and reuse, recycle or upcycle or reduce, most important. It would be good if we can help us work through a way that, after all, we invite you to our residency for 2 months to learn from you, and that how we can, from your concept, to even modify it deeper. Okay. Yeah. Think about it.
Actually, I have a lot of things to say because I have made some works using it's garbage. No works. My voice is so garbage issue is quite huge. So. These days lots of artists trying to use those garbage as material, but in many like different attitude or aspects. And I am very pessimistic about this. Yeah, because it looks like it's very difficult to stop this cycle. How to say, how to call it? Lots of production and lots of yes, consumption. Just say this cycle. And yeah, one day I was in Egypt. It was a long time ago, but train, and I saw the train full of trashes. It got lots of like all the way, and then I was shocked. Oh, it's very. Then, but I had a let's say like a bento box, lunch box, and I'd eaten bento. I was eating in a train, and after I have eaten, I tried to like put it in my bag, the trash, and then a woman sat in front of me, said, "No, no, 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 no!" They grab it and throw it away from the window, and she looks very proud of it. She looks happy. It's like, I teach you how to throw your garbage. This is what you should do. Okay, so what can I do? So, yeah, this picture is very strong for when I think about garbage. So, how to educate the people is very important. Like as you said, here in Taipei, people have always, they're conscious not to throw, keep the street clean. This is very basic, we should, but yeah. So many countries doesn't have that basic, conscious. But yeah, I'm thinking that some 100 years ago, there's no garbage, I think.
Well, everything was biodegradable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Still garbage. I mean, that's what archaeological sites are filled with. People throwing on the street in basements.
True. Yeah.
They just didn't make plastic back then.
Yeah. So especially this 100 years, the stuff called garbage is growing. Nowadays, it's very rapid, very quick. So define garbage itself is interesting, because to collect garbage or unused object is very easy now. Yeah, so I sometimes collect like stuff. I mean, used stuff from people. It's very easy, but it looks it's very still you can use. It's almost new stuff, but people define it. This is not necessary anymore for person. Yeah. So.
I just saw her hunched over for a second. Okay. Looks scary. From this angle, it looks scary.
What? Okay.
Because it goes on the internet.
Okay, hello.
他是高岭哥，然后就是现在在竹围工作室就是进驻，然后现在在北艺的新媒所，就是新媒体处所，然后在就是由袁广明老师，然后邀请高岭哥去教这样子。
Yeah. So defining, so this is for you garbage, but for me it's not garbage. Right? So this is how you could recycling. Yeah, so it's always a question. I mean, garbage is like how to say, like a political. Yeah, it is all about a value. I think. One thing is like you have a lot of one coin shop, right? Yeah, everything you can use like $10, no, like $1. And if I buy, yeah, it's very useful. So I go there often. But everything I buy there is easy to throw away because it's cheap. Yeah. And this cycle, that kind of shop makes another cycle. It's just like, like a quicker throw it away. Do you understand? Yeah. Yeah, so, blah. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. So, there's no solution for me.
No, I'm not proposing a solution.
I don't have solution.
I mean, my opinion is really that my opinion is that we have to, we have to stop using these horrible materials. Not you and I. We can't. I can barely do anything. I mean, most horrible litter and most garbage that's toxic is industry waste. It's not individual consumption. We can't. We definitely play a role, but there's a much bigger element than we can't control, and that level, that's the level that if we really that really needs to change. And also availability. Like if plastic bags weren't available, we wouldn't have, we wouldn't have them. And they're cheap and they're easy to produce. There's one of the biggest companies in Taiwan is a plastic manufacturer. And they've polluted the United States quite a bit, actually. I read some horrible things about how because in Taiwan apparently your laws are stricter than in the United States. So the plastics companies in the United States come to the United States and do horrible things to our environment because we don't have any laws protecting our environment the way that you have. But yeah, we have to. There's a bigger picture. Individual responsibility is important, but it's actually a small piece. But I think that I guess I'm also interested in the sort of the idea of value that even the people that sweep the streets we sort of attribute negative thoughts to them. Like the garbage man is dirty. We use prisoners to pick up trash, and it's in England. They're all they're all immigrants working these jobs. They're sort of low wage jobs. So I think that for me the idea of like elevating litter is also an idea of like giving more value to this thing that it's not, that if we start to think about this really common ubiquitous something as having a value other than what it is, other than being discarded, then we, it's maybe we'll think differently about it. That it's not, it's not just a plastic bag. It's a plastic bag with many remarkable qualities.
I think at the beginning it does have meaning. For example, if you get a plastic bag in Africa, like people who need clean water will be able to fill clean water with these plastic bags, and where it's cheap and also it's very useful. It can help a whole family for water. And however, it's I think essentially it's because humans are just really good at abusing things and to another level and make it into a really, really bad things, such as like abuse use of plastic bags, make it into something that's like so impossible to deal with. But however, essentially it is a really useful tool for people from different countries to actually use that and then to benefit their lives. So yeah, it's just a thought.
Yeah. There's also this like there's also this like sanitary element to it that's really funny. Like my mother-in-law prefers to use paper towels for everything, as opposed to actual reusable towels. And my mom, I think probably too, there's an idea that these things that are disposable are also more hygienic, and it sort of adds to this culture of like being scared of germs.
Yeah.
Which is, a whole nother.
Yeah, they consider being clean as a way of showing your civilization progress as well, which is, at the same time, it's kind of ironic that being civilized, at the same time you're producing waste that's not necessarily that did not need to be used before, which is it's another way of describing, for example, distinction between higher classes or in lower classes, because they have more power or they have more resources to use like things that is more delicate, wrapped, for instance, in Japan. Or you can have endless plastic cups in America. With those cups, like they play cup games with, they're making sounds.
The red cups.
Yeah.
That's
such a.
I only ever heard about that as in England.
Is
that
it?
Americans love these red cups.
Yeah, they love it. There's a competition for that, like cupping. They stack cups together and then making competition to see who can changing the shapes the fastest, and then who wants the competition on the internet. It's an internet sensation. And I remember that there's a girl who kind of like broke the world records, and then she recorded this like a video of she stacking all the cups together, and then it's becoming, and then at the end she just like, oh my god, screaming, oh my god, and that piece of scream was being collected by a DJ called Skrillex into his songs as part of the a sample. So this is quite far away from what I was gonna say, but just some sharing thoughts.
The part that I like about you as an architect is that you're aware of the environment and aware about the public space, and that's why you're aware about the litter in the public space. And comparing the different cities, like you say, you've realized that there's not much difference between different cities. Pretty much these are man-made or natural waste. Man-made waste are mainly plastic or metal that people throw away. So this is where your artwork, in a way, transform in such a way, hopefully, to promote the awareness that we shouldn't be putting these things there. And on the other hand, as you said, the life of the sweepers. If I were a sweeper, I'll get very angry with everybody on the street. I just swept it and you made it dirty in 2 hours. And I just swept it and I have to sweep it again. So who are the people that are they aware about the work and the hard work of the sweeper that sweep the streets every day, and what you transform what they sweep into art, which really elevate their sort of status of cleaning the street. But hopefully the act also of sweeping the street and littered again on the same block, hopefully would also make people realize who put it there. That's what the artist Yi Xuan that we just showed just now. He went into Zhuwei almost every day with his camera taking pictures of whoever left garbage on the street. Eventually, the people notice and they call and ask, is he from the environmental department? Because our environmental department will catch people putting garbage on the street. And he has to say, I am from Bamboo Curtain Studio, I am an artist, I'm documenting waste. So it is an education and a process that I think your work will bring that awareness out that I really appreciate. Thank you.
What? Oh, I think we can end, right? No other questions? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming. And thank you, Bamboo, for having me. It's been great.